Hello, everyone. Welcome to Verlita's Everything in Between podcast. I am your host, Verlita Odom. Thank you so much for joining me yet again. I appreciate the love and support. And this is the second episode in basically a series on mental health, because May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And as I said in the last brief episode that I published, this episode is going to be for the fellas. So I am going to be discussing men and depression. Ladies, for you who are listening, that means that this is for your husband, your boyfriend, your brother, your dad, your best friend, whoever that male is in your life that may not listen to the podcast. You can still gain that knowledge and be able to share that with them, or at least even point them in the direction of the podcast, tell them where to listen, and they can get the information for themselves. So I will see you guys after the brief break. So before we get into men and depression, I definitely think it's necessary to discuss what depression is. I know many people probably feel like, oh, well, if you're sad or you're feeling down, then you're depressed. But there is actually a clinical definition for depression. And if you guys want to kind of do a little research on your own, you can go to the National Institute of Mental Health, and they have so many resources there for anyone who is interested in learning more about mental health and mental illnesses. So if you go to the National Institute of Mental Health to read about depression, what they indicate depression is that, first of all, we all know that all of us get down, we can all get sad, but that's not necessarily depression, right? Depression is a common but serious mood disorder that may cause severe symptoms. Depression affects the ability to feel, think, and handle daily activities. Also known as major depressive disorder or clinical depression, a man must have symptoms for at least 2 weeks to be diagnosed with depression. So there it is. It's not necessarily something that you have randomly, having trouble sleeping or being irritable here and there. In order to actually be diagnosed with depression, major depressive disorder, or clinical depression, you have to have the symptoms. A man has to have the symptoms for at least 2 weeks to be diagnosed. So these are some of the signs or symptoms that you may want to look for. Is he angry? Is he irritable? Has he become more aggressive? What about feeling anxious or restless? Does he seem to be on edge? Has there been a loss of interest in work or family or anything that he found pleasurable at some time during the past? Problems with sexual desire and performance can be an indication of depression. Feeling sad or empty, flat or hopeless. Guys, if you are having trouble concentrating or remembering things, if you are feeling really tired, not being able to sleep, or you're maybe even sleeping too much, just like sometimes people overeat when they're depressed, and then there are those who don't eat enough when they're depressed, when they're going through depression. Are you experiencing thoughts of suicide or attempted suicide? And I will say this, when doing the research for the podcast, I did come across this information on the National Institute of Mental Health. It stated that women with depression actually attempt suicide more often, but men are actually more likely to die by suicide because they tend to use more lethal methods. So that was actually pretty interesting to read. So, everyone is different, but these are just some of the common signs and symptoms that a male may actually experience if you are going through depression. So if you're experiencing any of these things for at least 2 weeks, are you now engaging in high-risk activities? Do you feel the need to drink? Are you using drugs? Are you withdrawing from your family, your friends? Are you becoming isolated? What about physical aches or pains? Headaches or cramps, digestive problems, because we know that stress and depression can manifest physically. So those could actually be signs or symptoms that you experience also when you're going through depression. Inability to meet the responsibilities at work, expectations at work or with your family, or other important activities. So that's a pretty significant list there, or signs and symptoms that you can look for. Men in yourself, and women, for the men in your life, whether it be, again, father, son, brother, whoever it may be. So if you're experiencing some of those symptoms and you've been going through it, for at least 2 weeks, you probably need to go talk to someone. And it doesn't have to be a counselor initially. It can be your primary care physician, your PCP, to get their take and their professional opinion and advice on what you're going through. Now, I do want to add that although that was a pretty significant list of signs and symptoms of depression in men, it can often be missed because depression in men doesn't always present the same way as it does in women. So, for instance, when I mentioned that men can become angry or aggressive, people can easily just take that at face value and say, oh, well, they're just an angry person. He's just a mean or aggressive guy. But, his depression could, or your depression, guys, could be presenting itself as aggression. So, that's one of the things that's one of the reasons why your depression can go missed or undiagnosed. Family may miss it, and your doctors may miss it as well, and not diagnose it because it doesn't present the way they normally see it in females. So that's why it's important that you learn what depression is, learn and admit and be ready to address what you're going through so that you can advocate for yourself. You definitely can't advocate for yourself if you're in denial about what you're going through. Just make sure that you have to be fully aware and fully willing to address the issues that you may be going through if you're really wanting to have treatment. Okay, so according to the National Institute of Mental Health, one of the first things you want to do when you are seeking a diagnosis is to go to your PCP, your primary care physician. Let them know what you're experiencing, because that way they can do an exam and do lab work, and they can rule out any physical ailments that you may have, because there could be something going on with you physically, medically, that is contributing or causing the symptoms that you're experiencing. So that's a great place to start, is to go to a PCP and do your PCP and tell them what you're experiencing, and then go from there. If things are ruled out, then of course they can make the diagnosis of depression if your signs and symptoms are reflective in length of time of those symptoms warrant a diagnosis. So once you're diagnosed, what are the treatments? It's going to be medication and or psychotherapy. I like to see a combination because psychotherapy, or just therapy, is very, very useful and helpful. And you are dealing with trained and usually licensed medical professional or mental health professionals who are able to help you get to the root cause of what's going on, and to help you make meaningful changes and adjustments in your life to better handle your diagnosis. I'm definitely not against medication, but I really do feel that therapy should go along with that. But not everyone is willing to talk to a therapist. Not all men want to sit down and talk about their feelings and their emotions, and that's really unfortunate. I think that's just an issue we have in general when we're raising our boys. We teach them to be tough, to be strong, to not to cry. You don't share your feelings, and then when you're an adult, that's what we expect. That's our biggest complaint, is that you don't share your feelings. And so I know that therapy is not usually appealing to a lot of men, but I think that giving it a try is definitely something that everyone should do, or at least be willing to try, even if it's once. If you're diagnosed with depression and you need to speak with someone, I think you should advocate for yourself and do that. Even if you choose not to return a second time, just going and getting that experience, finding out what there is to offer, makes a big difference. And it also helps kind of clear out any misconceptions or stereotypes that you may have formed about going to a therapist. So, what do you do if the man in your life, regardless of the relationship or role of who the male is, what do you do, and how can you be supportive? So, obviously, if you think they're going through depression, you can discuss that with them. You can encourage them to make an appointment with their PCP. If they're willing to allow you to make the appointment for them, I think that's a great start as well. Other ways you can support is just by offering the person support and understanding and patience, because even if the person is depressed and has been diagnosed, they may not be ready for treatment. They may not be ready to have therapy or even take medication. So I think that it's important to be patient and to just, encourage them, continue to encourage them to get the help that will help them move past their depression. And it's not something that they can just snap out of. If it's actually a diagnosis of depression, it's something that many people battle their entire lives. And so you just have to learn how to cope during those periods of depression. And that's one of the reasons why I think therapy is such a great idea, because they can help you learn these things and teach you life skills and ways to cope with your depression. So other ways that you can be supportive: listening carefully and talking with your loved one, encouraging them to report any concerns about medications, which is another reason why a lot of people don't like to take medications. It's because of the symptoms that could result from taking the medication. And so I think it's important to encourage them to be open and upfront about any symptoms they may be experiencing due to taking medications. Also reminding him that with time and treatment, the depression will lift. Now, does it mean it won't return? No, it doesn't mean that it's never going to come back, because again, as I stated before, many people battle it their whole lives. But it's just important to remind them that it won't always be as dark as it is at that particular moment. Also, just never ignoring comments about suicide, and alerting therapists or doctors or loved ones, or even the police if you need to, about the person, if the person's having suicidal ideations. It's important that you encourage them to reach out to someone. Also, side note, 988 National Suicide Hotline, Crisis Hotline, and that launched, I believe, last year. I've given that out as a resource to several patients that I have, and I think that it is definitely a useful resource. So what can you do for yourself if you're the one that's experiencing depression? If you're the man who is experiencing depression, spending time with family and friends, even though one of the signs and symptoms is that you usually want to self-isolate and start to withdraw from your family and friends. Fight that urge, spend time with them, talk to your friends or your relatives about what you're going through. They love you and they want to see you succeed. So I think it's important that you just really try to press forward and spend time with family and friends that you're comfortable with, sharing your feelings with. Also, the National Institute of Mental Health recommends that you increase your physical activity. It says regular exercise can help people with mild and moderate depression, and maybe one part of the treatment plan for those with severe depression. So, exercise can go a long way. It's not just for fitness. It doesn't just help you physically. It also helps you mentally as well. So also avoid alcohol, because that can make it worse. So even though, the tendency for a lot of people is to drink when they're going through things, it can actually make it worse. So just try not to do that. Try to stay away from alcohol, especially when you're in a low period, and battling your depression. Also, they recommend that you keep a steady daily routine. So eating and going to bed at the same time every day, apparently, actually helps. And then if you're not feeling well, delaying making really important decisions until you feel better. Discuss decisions with others who know you well. Because as we know, when we get down and we're not feeling like ourselves, we have a tendency to make some pretty poor decisions. So if you can put off important or big decisions during a time that you're battling your depression, then they recommend that you do so. So if you ever find yourself in a crisis, again, there's things that you can do. Obviously, call 911 for emergency services. You can call your doctor, and you can go to the hospital, to the nearest emergency room. You also can call. There's a 24-hour hotlines, the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. The number's 1-800-273-TALK or 1-800-273-8255. I gave you guys the 988 number as well. And then for veterans, of course, you can use all those same resources, but veterans also have the added help or added benefit of being able to call that number and then pressing 1. Okay, that's according to the National Institute of Mental Health. That is pretty much it. My plan is to do a couple of episodes about mental health this month, since, again, May is Mental Health Awareness Month. I'd like to also discuss what happens or how it impacts women as well. So I hope this was helpful to you. I'm going to attach a survey question to this episode. Men, if you would, just answer the question for me on whether or not you have experienced depression, or, have you had a male friend experience depression? You can go in as much detail as possible if you want to. What they did for treatment, what you did for treatment, and how you deal with it. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I am so appreciative of you spending time listening. If you want to message me, you may do so on social media. You can direct message me. My podcast has an Instagram page as well, where I share a lot of inspirational messages as well as some scriptures, always trying to uplift and inspire and encourage people, because I love to be encouraged and uplifted as well. And so if you want to follow me on my Instagram page, it is Verlita Odom, and then Verlita's everything in between. Every word is separated by an underscore, so Verlita's _ everything _ between. Sounds long, but it's not as bad as it seems. So if you guys want to follow me there, if you can direct message me there. If you're connected with me on any of the other social media platforms that I'm on, feel free to do that. Also, you can email me at only1vlo2@gmail.com. That is only1vlo2, the number 2, gmail.com. I look forward to getting your messages and reading your comments. And again, thank you for your time, and I'll see you on the next episode. Be well.